NPC, non-player character. This label is used to categorize anyone or anything that the player doesn't control. They're more prevalent in certain genres of games. Some rely entirely on your interactions with NPCs, while others have basically none. They can do a lot of things: fight you, give you stuff, save your game, sell you things, but most often they'll just talk to you. This label can apply to major story characters that you don't play as, such as the antagonist. But for this video, I'd like to focus on the less important NPCs in games. These unnamed characters that you can easily pass by don't always get much recognition, but I think it's important to illustrate how well they can help or hurt a game. Whether you pay attention to them or not, they're in most games, and I believe they can be largely set into three categories: assistance, entertainment, and world building. I'll start with assistance, the most simple of the three. These NPCs exist to help the player. They may give tutorials and advice about the mechanics of the game, give you an item or a side quest, or directions to the next objective. This can be done without even directly speaking to the player. In Oblivion, you can eavesdrop on procedurally generated conversations, one of which involves two people talking about how to be recruited into the Dark Brotherhood. And in Metal Gear Solid, you can hear a loud when the guards are no longer alerted by Snake. I'd say this category is the least important of the three, as a lot of its functions can be accomplished otherwise. For example, a tutorial can be given by those omniscient boxes of text. Items can be found in a treasure chest or on the ground, directions can be found on signs or with waypoints, etc. Assistance NPCs are not always the way to go, as they may spoil the tone of the game if, for example, you're in an isolated place. Furthermore, a game may find this type of NPC entirely unnecessary. Perhaps it is a game where you don't collect items, or the conventions of this genre or series are so well known that you don't need any explanation on how to progress. Moving on to NPCs that exist to entertain, they can do just about anything. They can take your picture, alert you, ask you questions about the Beatles, form a maze, give you a weird cake that transports you to a floating Asian palace. Man, that's a lot of Earthbound examples. And of course, they can just talk to you. Just as they can do anything, they can also say anything, even if it is not particularly useful to the player in any way. What they say may range anywhere from a synopsis of their life and experiences to a simple joke. Despite not being consequential to the main events of the game, they can do wonders. They can liven what may otherwise be a dull or sluggish part of the game, or just stand on their own as a brief enjoyable experience without adding to any integral part of the game. Similar to assistance NPCs, the frequency of these depends on the genre and intended experience of the game. Some games rely entirely on the charm of their entertainment NPCs, while others would only be hindered by them. Talking about NPCs that build the world is tricky, because I'd say they're the most important and just as common as the other two, if not more so. However, since every part of a game contributes to the atmosphere in some way, tutorial and entertainment NPCs can often inadvertently be world building all the same. Because of this, I'd say most NPCs fulfill at least two of the roles I've listed. However, to start, I will exclude any overlap and just focus on NPCs that exist to create a fictional area that feels alive. Their role is to inform the player about the fantasy they are in, either directly or indirectly. They give context for the world, or help set the tone of the game. The easiest way to do this is to have every NPC just info dump, giving you heaps of text that blatantly tell you everything you need to know. Needless to say, this is the least intuitive and least beneficial method for a game. In Hollow Knight, you meet a bug named Mila, who sings a cryptid song as she digs. If you return, you'll find she sporadically includes things in her song like dangerous and light. Later, she is immediately hostile when you approach her. This conveys the corruption and hostility of the land you're traversing without expressly saying anything. Hollow Knight actually does this well in a lot of ways, like the bizarre poems you find on slabs throughout the world, or the ability to read people's minds only to find stuff like breed and light calls. Another way to create a better world is to have someone talk about their personal life. This can reflect how any common person feels about the area they live in, or how they feel about major events in the game. In Animal Crossing, you can see how individual villagers feel about festivals or holidays that are occurring. And the dialect and tone of the characters you talk to can also shed light on how individuals are affected personally by the things occurring in the world. However, NPCs don't even need to speak to flesh out the world. In The World Ends With You, the game takes place in the crowded streets of Shibuya. Naturally, people won't even talk to you, so you have to read their minds to see how they feel. This emphasizes the hustle and bustle nature of a large city by doing the opposite of what NPCs are expected to normally do in most other games. Conversely, the lack of people to interact with in most Metroid games reiterates the isolated and barren nature of the planets you're exploring. One thing I find strange is when NPCs seem to only say things related to the main character's plight, or are able to help you and say exactly the right information relevant to what you're doing. NPCs with their own schedules that don't just stand around waiting to help you truly make a world come alive, as if each person has their own life and responsibilities to attend to. These normal people can allow for a contrast between you and them. Being a hell-sealing, magic-casting lizard man is way cooler when everyone else is an ordinary farmer or a merchant. The juxtaposition between a hero and civilian needs to be done delicately, as certain games have different needs. If a game revolves around a power fantasy, then it'd be only beneficial to make you seem godly, but making a main character seem supernatural can harm the mood of a game where you need to feel weak and despondent. Having people that are detached from your quest is not always a good thing though. In Castlevania 2, irrelevant and unnecessary dialogue makes for a game that not just misleads the player, but has them often confused and not sure where to go or what to do. The only way to know what your objective is to talk to these villagers, but they scarcely give you anything you can understand, let alone information you will be able to apply. Instead of building the world around you, per se, the people you talk to can help characterize a great evil that you're fighting. For example, in Valkyria Chronicles 4, there's a side quest when a nameless soldier hesitates to kill one of your units because he has a little sister at home, and he couldn't stand the thought of taking away someone else's family member. The empire you're fighting is largely labeled as big and evil, but moments like these with individual NPCs give insight that morality is not black and white, and every person you kill has their own life and backstory. Now that I've categorized all non-player characters, I'd like to recognize the creative ways they can be used. In Mother 3, villagers have dialogue that adapts based on some changes, like for example new party members. This isn't particularly uncommon, but it's a nice departure from a static world and has the potential to be used in more specific and creative ways. In Pokemon Gold and Silver, the trainers you've defeated beforehand can call you later, asking you to battle them again, or telling you about certain Pokemon being available to catch. Even the way a text box is presented can add character to the game. In Golf Story, the animated text and speech bubbles characters use is indicative of their tone, and adds personality to anything said. In the Mother series, the Mr. Saturns have an odd, difficult to read font based on a child's handwriting, which is akin to the foreign and often silly nature of these creatures. And in the Japanese version of Undertale, Papyrus's text is in the old-fashioned style of Takigaki to indicate his attempt at formality. As much as NPCs can do for games, they can just as well be done poorly and be a detriment to the game. While I did say information about a random character can offer a new perspective on a situation, it can just as easily bog down the experience with information the player doesn't care about or is already aware of. In Xenoblade Chronicles, I missed 2 side quests that involved major upgrades because I grew tired of talking to the game's bland NPCs. Or, if a game revolves around being off the wall and quirky, doing this improperly can spoil the eccentric nature of the game. Furthermore, dialect and phrases that don't fit naturally within the game can break immersion and stick out like a sore thumb. No NPC is better than a bad NPC. When first considering this topic, it astonished me as to how many roles these often forgettable background characters can fill. You see NPCs in nearly every game because they're so versatile and can be utilized for different purposes in every genre, and even now they're being used in refined ways of which we haven't seen the likes of before. In the past, NPCs were sometimes the only way to guide you and lacked a lot of polish, dumping information on the player or being unclear, but now these minor characters are the sprinkles on a delicious cake of a game.